In this course, we're going to be reviewing the fundamentals of programming with a software programming language called Java. Java is one of the most popular programming languages available. It's still in wide use both in industry and in school, and it's been around for a considerable amount of time. Sure, there's newer languages that might be more exciting, but Java provides us the fundamentals to make sure that we know all the concepts well. Java is an object-oriented language, which means it has a set of features to better manage and scale your code base. This is, say, as compared to C, which doesn't have as many of those fancy features. Java is a compiled language, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but essentially means there's an extra step between when you write your language and then you turn it into something the computer can understand. This makes it so that Java can run on a lot of different devices. And finally, Java has automatic memory management, or in our case, the garbage collector. This means that whenever you create objects in the Java world, if you stop using them, well, then that memory in your computer is automatically released. A much simpler process than, say, when you're using something like C or C++, where you always have to be paying attention to the memory that you're using. In order to write Java, you have to download a couple things. You have to download what is called the JDK, or Java Development Kit, from Oracle, who is currently owning and operating the Java programming language. Then you have to have an editor where you can write your Java code. Your editor will interact with your JDK to know how to compile and translate your Java into something the machine can run. The compile stage is when it takes the code that you write and turns it into that machine code. And it's a chance for you to catch any extra errors. In fact, we'll look at what some of those compiler errors are like later in this video. Once you've written all of your Java code, then is the run phase, which is where you're telling the computer to actually execute or act on the instructions that you've given it. You can do any of these things in lots of different IDEs, or integrated development environments. In this course, we're going to be using IntelliJ for all of our demos, but other IDEs like Eclipse or even something more simpler like BlueJ are also popular. Let's look at a Java program. This is the Hello World, or the most basic Java program. As you can see, it's got a few different lines just to accomplish the task of printing out the words Hello World to the console. The first piece is the class. This is the outer wrapper of anything you write in Java, and it uses the keywords public class, and then in our case, we've called this Hello World. You can notice too that whatever file you save this code in has to match the name of the class, and it has to match exactly, and you can't use spaces. It's considered typical for you to use a capital letter at the start of your name and then to capitalize every subsequent word, or camel case the name of your classes. After the class, one sort of level in is the main method. This is the part of Java and all of these keywords strung together that tell the computer this is the code to actually run or execute. It's sort of like the start here please message. There's a lot of keywords here, and you can learn what each of these mean individually, but if you're just starting out, this might be something you want to just memorize. Then finally we get to the code. This is our first Java command. It's called a println, and what it does is it takes the words that we've put between those quotes, in this case hello world, and just prints them out to the console. These words contained within the quotation marks are what we would call a string. In Java, you have to define what each piece of data is, and string is considered a type of data. And really, that's just a fancy way in Java of saying a collection of characters. The characters can be all letters and spaces and punctuation. It can also have numbers. It's generally referred to as things in between quotation marks, so you'll see it maybe change color in whatever IDE you're using. It can also be multiple lines, but you have to use a special character for that. So if you just try to create a string like this one, your computer won't understand it. And there are some other special characters that you might need to use, like tab, or let's say if you want to have a quotation mark in the middle of your string. In order to add these, you simply put a / in front of them. That way, that tells the computer to escape that character's functionality and just include it in the string. Once you have your strings, you can print them out to the console with your Java command. This is a Java println. It starts with system.out.println, and essentially it just means take whatever I'm putting between these parentheses and produce it to the console, which should pop up at the bottom of your IDE. Here are some examples of printlns. As you can see, we've put whatever we want printed between quotation marks within the parentheses of the println. And it would produce output just like this. The cool thing about a println is it takes whatever you write in between those quotation marks and then adds a carriage return at the end of it. It's kind of like if you're typing in a processor like Microsoft Word, and then you get to the end of your line and you hit the Enter key. It automatically goes down to the next line. That's what happens at the end of your println too. So if you want to have these three things all printed out on separate lines, you'd use the .println. There is another command that's .print that doesn't have the carriage return, but chances are this is the one you're going to use most often. Let's talk a little bit more about compiler errors. This is one of the wonderful things about Java is that it tells us sometimes when we mess up so that we can catch those mistakes early. If you're using something like IntelliJ, you actually don't hit compile. It's automatically compiling your code as you go, and it represents mistakes as little red squiggly lines. You'll see this happen in things like Eclipse as well. So let's say that we forgot the semicolon at the end of our println. Well, I might hover over my little red squiggly line and see a message like this, where it says, hey, semicolon expected. What a helpful message. This is great because actually every line in Java has to end with either a curly brace or a semicolon. This one's super helpful. All you have to do is put the semicolon back where it belongs, and the error will go away. Sometimes the errors aren't the best at telling you what's actually going wrong, but they're still a good indicator that something's wrong. Let's say we forgot a curly brace. So if we forget the open curly brace on the main method, then we might get a compiler error that looks like this, where it's sort of trying to say, hey, something's expected on this line, but it didn't actually understand that it was a curly brace. But it's a good time for you to go back and look at that line of code that you wrote and figure out, hey, is there anything I'm missing here? Another really common error is forgetting to close one of your curly braces. If you're writing in an IDE like IntelliJ, whenever you open a curly brace, it'll automatically insert a closing one for you, mostly to avoid this exact error. You can also see that I've indented my main method and my statements one level in whenever I add an open curly brace, and then I return back a level of indentation when I'm done with that statement. That's to make it easier for me to see when I might miss things. So in this case, I missed the closing curly brace that matches my class's curly brace set. And so you're probably going to get an error like this. If you see an error like this, chances are you've forgotten a curly brace somewhere, and you should go back and hover over your curly braces and make sure that they're pairing up anywhere in your program. Now you have a quick rundown of what a Java program looks like. Remember that the compiler is there to help you, and there's lots of great tools in your IDE to make writing Java easy as possible. But really, the best way that you're going to learn how to do Java is with lots of practice.